Hey everyone, ready to get a little uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Today we're diving into Please by Peter Darbyshire,
Hmm.
a novel that's as unsettling as it is strangely compelling.
Definitely.
We're working with a digital copy, pleasebooko.pdf, to unpack those moments that stick with you long after you finish the last page.
It's one of those books that, just burrows under your skin,
Yeah.
leaves you questioning things.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Okay.
Right from the start,
Yeah.
Darbyshire throws us into the deep end with a nameless narrator.
Right.
I mean, not even a hint of a name.
Nope.
It's almost as if he's a stand-in for any one of us.
That anonymity is a brilliant choice, I think.
Yeah,
It forces us to confront story without the usual anchors of character identification.
right.
And those opening lines,
Oh, yeah.
stark and vertical on the page, I couldn't live like that.
Wow.
It sets the tone immediately, wouldn't you say?
Chilling for sure.
Yes.
And then there's this habit he has.
Yeah.
Peering into the windows of strangers' houses.
Right.
It's more than just creepy.
Yeah.
It suggests a deep longing for something he's missing in his own life.
Like he's trying to find connection through those brightly lit windows,
Uh-huh.
searching for a warmth that eludes him.
Right.
That voyeurism could be Derbyshire's commentary on the isolation of modern life.
Hmm.
We're constantly bombarded with curated versions of others' lives.
Yeah,
But true connection feels increasingly out of reach.
that's a great point.
Yeah.
And it's mirrored in the narrator's financial struggles.
Yeah.
The constant worry about affording gas for his car.
Right.
He's literally and figuratively stuck,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
always on the edge of running on empty.
That feeling of being trapped is palpable throughout the book.
Definitely.
And then, of course, there's that bizarre encounter with the blind man looking for a missing newspaper box.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's the middle of the night,
Yeah.
and he claims to hear children playing at a school.
Huh.
Is that just a detail meant to unsettle us?
Or is it something more? Could it be a sign of mental instability? It's certainly unsettling,
Yeah.
but I'm drawn to the idea that it's a metaphor.
Okay.
Think about it. He's looking for something that isn't there,
Yeah.
a newspaper box in the dead of night.
Right.
Could that represent a search for truth,
Hmm.
for connection,
Okay.
that is no longer available in the world he inhabits?
That's a really interesting interpretation.
It's like he's lost in a world he can no longer navigate.
Yeah.
And he's relying on this narrator
Right.
who's equally lost to guide him.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Uh-huh.
And then he leads the narrator to this supposed group home,
Okay.
which is anything but ordinary.
Hmm.
The red painted address on the
Mhm.
door,
Yep.
the tall fence,
Right.
the violent scene playing out on the television inside.
Oh, wow.
It's all meticulously crafted to create this sense of unease.
Right.
Like there's something sinister lurking beneath the surface of normality.
Derbyshire's a master of atmosphere, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And then the blind man offers our narrator drugs.
Oh, yeah.
Such a sudden escalation.
All right.
And it leaves us wondering about his true intentions.
Hmm.
Is this a genuine offer of hospitality or a trap?
It's fascinating how quickly the situation shifts.
Yeah.
And I think that ambiguity is key.
Okay.
It forces us to question our assumptions about who to trust
Uh-huh.
and what might be hidden beneath seemingly harmless gestures.
Hmm.
Remember how the narrator describes the houses he observes as warm and inviting?
Yeah.
This encounter with the blind man subverts that expectation.
Right.
What appears welcoming on the surface might hold darkness underneath.
It definitely throws the reader off balance.
Yeah.
And speaking of unbalance, let's talk about the narrator's relationship with the woman with the metal arm.
Okay.
There's something so intriguing about her.
Hmm.
They tour condos they can't afford,
Uh-huh.
and she dreams of being an actress despite the challenges she faces.
I find their dynamic fascinating.
Yeah.
You mentioned she's intriguing,
Mm-hmm.
and I agree.
Yeah.
But I hesitate to label her as simply numb to the loss of her arm.
Okay.
Her matter-of-fact way of describing it could be a defense mechanism.
Right.
A way of coping with a traumatic experience.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's easy to project our own interpretations onto these characters,
Right.
especially since the narrator himself is so unreliable.
Mm.
It makes me wonder if their shared fantasy of a better life,
Yeah.
those condo tours,
Right.
represents a longing for something they both know they can never truly attain.
That yearning for escape is definitely a recurring theme.
Yeah.
And then, of course, she leaves him for a man with cancer,
Oh, wow.
which feels like a gut punch to the narrator's already fragile ego.
Right.
Yeah.
It's another example of a fleeting connection,
Uh-huh.
a failed attempt at finding something lasting.
Yeah.
And it reinforces the book's overall sense of disillusionment,
Right.
the difficulty of forming genuine bonds in a world that feels increasingly fractured.
And that fragmentation is mirrored in the structure of the novel itself, wouldn't you say?
Hmm.
It jumps between episodes,
Yeah.
jobs, encounters, almost like a series of snapshots.
Like we're peering into the fragmented psyche of the narrator.
Yes.
Experiencing his life as a series of disjointed moments.
Exactly.
Which makes me think about all those different jobs he takes on.
Oh, yeah.
A theater usher.
Right.
A bartender. A phone sex operator.
Mm-hmm.
The list goes on.
It does.
Is Derbyshire commenting on the gig economy? The constant hustle and lack of stability in modern life?
I think there's definitely a commentary on the nature of work in the modern world.
Right.
But I'm also struck by how these constantly shifting roles contribute to the narrator's a lack of a stable identity. He's always performing,
Right.
never quite revealing his true self.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
It's like he's constantly searching for a role that fits a place where he belongs.
Right.
And that brings us to the phone sex operator job. How does
What?
that connect to the broader themes of voyeurism and the search for connection in place?
Well, it's interesting to consider how that particular job plays into the idea of artificial intimacy.
Right.
He's providing a service, a
Right.
fantasy, but there's no real connection there. It's a transaction,
Okay.
a performance.
And yet there's still this element of voyeurism, this
Yeah.
listening in on the desires and fantasies of strangers.
Right.
It's a twisted version of the window peeping, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's voyeurism filtered through technology, a mediated form of intimacy that ultimately leaves him feeling even more isolated. And it's worth noting how this job connects to his later obsession with the musician king.
You're right.
Yeah.
They're both figures who exist in this realm of fantasy and performance. And just like those phone sex clients,
Right.
the narrator projects his own desires and longings onto King.
Yeah.
Searching for meaning in something that is ultimately unattainable.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that brings us to perhaps one of the most unsettling, ambiguous scenes in the book.
Oh.
The narrator's experience at the religious gathering.
Okay.
He attends with a couple he barely knows,
Yeah.
walks into this frenzy of religious fervor, and gets completely swept up in it.
That scene is electric.
Oh, yeah.
People are speaking in tongues, falling to the floor,
Right.
writhing around. It's like some kind of mass possession.
Yeah.
But the book never explicitly states what's happening.
Right.
Is it mass hysteria?
Right.
Divine intervention? A chemical agent?
The ambiguity is intentional, I think.
Okay.
It forces us to confront our own beliefs, our
Right.
own interpretations of what's real and what's imagined.
Yeah.
And it's made even more complex by the presence of the protesters outside,
Oh, right.
denouncing the attendees as devil worshippers.
It's such a stark contrast.
Yeah.
Inside, you have this intense, almost ecstatic experience.
Uh-huh.
And outside, you have this fear and anger, this rejection of what's happening within those walls. It's a clash of ideologies,
It is.
of different ways of seeing the world.
And our narrator,
Yeah.
he's caught in the middle,
Right.
struggling to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
He tries to rationalize it,
Right.
dismiss it as mass hysteria or even a chemical agent.
Right.
But you can sense that this experience has shaken him, planted a seed of doubt about his own perception of reality.
It's a pivotal moment, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah.
Because it sets him on this path of searching for answers,
Yes.
for something to believe in,
Right.
to make sense of the chaos.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that search for meaning becomes intertwined with his pursuit of King.
Right.
The musician who represents, at least in the narrator's mind, something profound and authentic.
Right.
Yeah.
He becomes fixated on King, believing that if he could just meet him,
Yeah.
it will unlock something within himself. It's like he's projecting all his hopes and desires onto this stranger.
And brings us to the question,
Okay.
is this pursuit of King another form of voyeurism? Is he seeking connection through observation,
Right.
trying to find fulfillment by peering into the life of someone he believes has it all figured out?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's like he's searching for meaning and connection in all the wrong places.
And yet, isn't that a very human thing to do? Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you think about those moments where we lash onto something or someone hoping they'll provide the answers. We're so desperately seeking.
It's a universal experience, really, that yearning for meaning, for connection, for something to believe in.
Right.
And often those yearnings lead us down some pretty interesting paths. In the narrator's case, it's a literal chase through the streets after King jumps into a cab,
Right.
like a scene out of a spy movie.
It's so cinematic, right?
Yeah.
You can practically hear the screeching tires.
Oh, yeah.
And the pounding music as the narrator tries to keep up.
Yeah.
It perfectly captures that sense of urgency, that desperate need to find something, anything to hold on to.
And then just when it seems like he's lost King for good, he runs into Mia again.
Yeah.
Remember her?
Yeah.
The woman who leaves him for a man with cancer.
Oh, yeah, she's definitely made an impression.
Right.
But this time,
Yeah.
she becomes an unlikely ally in his quest to track down King.
Hmm.
She even pulls a gun on him at a concert to get his attention.
Talk about taking initiative.
Wow.
It's a bold move.
Yeah.
But it speaks to Mia's impulsiveness, her willingness to take risks.
Right.
And in a way, it mirrors the narrator's own desperation,
Uh-huh.
his willingness to go to extremes to get what he wants.
It's a strange dynamic they have.
Ah.
There's a definite spark between them,
Uh-huh.
but also this underlying tension.
I'd say their relationship is a microcosm of the book's larger themes.
Okay.
They're drawn to each other out of a shared sense of loneliness
Yeah.
and a desire for connection.
Uh-huh.
But ultimately, they're both too damaged, too guarded to let anyone in fully.
It makes you wonder if genuine connection is even possible for the narrator.
Yeah,
He pushes people away, sabotages his own chances at happiness.
right.
It's heartbreaking to watch.
It is.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the ending of the novel,
Okay.
which is, shall we say, open to interpretation.
Right.
What did you make of it?
Well, on the surface, it seems like the narrator could be experiencing a mental breakdown.
Hmm.
He's having hallucinations, getting fixated on these strange details, like a documentary about Mongolian women wearing tied T-shirts.
Those surreal details add to the book's unsettling atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's like we're entering a dreamscape, a world where the lines between reality and fantasy become increasingly blurred.
And then there's his relationship with Rachel,
Yeah.
which implodes spectacularly.
Oh, yeah.
She's pregnant, and he just abandons her at the grocery store.
Wow.
It's like he can't handle the responsibility, the weight of another human being's needs.
That act of abandonment is a powerful statement about his inability to commit,
Yeah.
his fear of intimacy.
Uh-huh.
He'd rather run than face the complexities of real life.
And the final scene where he crashes his car while trying to take a dying film director to the hospital feels almost symbolic, like his entire life has been this collision course with reality.
The imagery is striking, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's constantly seeking escape,
Right.
but it always leads to more chaos and destruction.
Yeah.
And the book ends with him lying in the wreckage, wondering if this is the end.
It's a bleak image.
Yeah.
But also one that leaves us with a lingering sense of unease.
Hmm.
Did he die in that crash?
Right.
Or is he destined to keep drifting through life, forever searching for something he can never quite grasp?
Those unanswered questions are precisely what make the ending so powerful.
Yeah.
They force us to confront the ambiguity of the human experience.
Right.
There are no easy answers, no neat resolutions.
Yeah.
We're left to grapple with the weight of those questions.
Uh-huh.
Which is fitting for a book that's so concerned with the search for meaning in a world that often feels meaningless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a book that stays with you long after you finish reading it.
It does.
It makes you question your own perceptions,
Uh-huh.
your own desires, your own search for meaning.
And it does so with this darkly humorous, almost surreal tone
Right.
that makes it both disturbing and strangely funny. I found myself laughing at some of the absurdities,
Uh-huh.
but then realizing that they weren't so absurd after all.
That's the brilliance of Derbyshire's writing.
Yeah.
He captures the absurdity of the human condition,
Mm-hmm.
the way we cling to these fleeting moments of hope and connection, even as we're constantly being pulled towards chaos and disillusionment. It's like he's holding up a mirror to our own anxieties and desires,
Yeah.
forcing us to confront the uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we live in.
It's not a comfortable read by any means.
No.
But for those willing to delve into the darker quarters of the human psyche, Please offers a profound and unforgettable reading experience.
I think what makes Please so compelling is that it resists easy categorization. It's a novel about loneliness,
Yeah.
about the search for meaning,
Uh-huh.
about the dark undercurrents of modern life.
Right.
But it's also a book that's strangely funny,
Yeah.
even hopeful at times.
Those moments of hope, however fleeting, are what make the darkness bearable. They remind us that even in a world that often feels fragmented and meaningless, there's still potential for connection, for beauty, for those unexpected moments of grace that make life worth living.
Those moments often come from the most unexpected places, don't they?
They do.
Like the narrator's encounters with the blind man,
Uh-huh.
or his brief connection with Mia.
Exactly. Yeah, and speaking of unexpected encounters, let's delve into some of the seemingly mundane details that Derbyshire infuses with this unsettling sense of unease.
Okay.
For instance, remember when the narrator helps his ex-wife's new husband move furniture?
It's such an ordinary situation.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Yeah.
There's this underlying tension, this feeling that the narrator is almost haunting them.
It's like he's trapped in the past, unable to let go of this relationship that's over.
Mm.
He describes his ex-wife's new life,
Yeah.
her new home,
Right.
with this strange mix of resentment and longing.
Right.
It's almost as if he's trying to convince himself that he's not missing anything,
Uh-huh.
but his words betray him.
And it's not just the ex-wife.
Right.
There's that other job, the one where he's a roadside assistance dispatcher.
Hmm.
It seems so mundane, yet Derbyshire twists it into something unsettling.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
That job gives him this strange power.
Yeah.
The ability to connect with people in moments of vulnerability. They're
Mhm.
stranded, desperate, and he's their lifeline.
Right.
But instead of empathy, there's this detachment, this voyeuristic quality to his interaction.
He's listening to their conversations,
Yeah.
their intimate moments of panic or despair.
Right.
And it's like he's feeding off their emotions, almost as if he's getting a perverse thrill from their misfortune.
It's almost like he's trying to find meaning in their vulnerability,
Mm.
a reflection of his own internal struggles.
Right.
And then there's that strange connection he develops with one particular caller, Jude.
Oh, yeah.
Remember him?
Jude, yeah, at first it seems like a simple case of a guy running out of gas.
Right.
But then he keeps calling back, and it becomes clear that he's searching for something more. That's kind of connection.
Jude represents this darker side of human connection,
Mm.
this desperate need for intimacy that can quickly turn into obsession.
Mm.
And the narrator, and he's both drawn to and repelled by that darkness. He recognizes it within himself.
It's like he sees a reflection of his own loneliness and desperation in Jude.
Right.
And it both fascinates and terrifies him.
Exactly. And then there's Hope.
Yeah.
His coworker at the call center who has her own strange obsession with a phone sex client.
Oh, wow.
It's like a twisted mirror image of the narrator's own experience as a phone sex operator.
It's fascinating how Derbyshire weaves those parallel storylines together.
Yeah.
Hope is yearning for connection, even if it's through this impersonal, simulated form.
Right.
It highlights the different ways we seek intimacy
Mm-hmm.
and how those searches can sometimes lead us down dangerous paths.
Absolutely. Both Hope and the narrator are searching for intimacy in all the wrong places.
Right.
They're both looking for something real, something genuine,
Yeah.
but they're trapped in these cycles of performance and voyeurism.
It's a poignant commentary on the challenges of human connection in a world that's becoming increasingly digital and disconnected.
Yeah.
We have all these ways to connect, yet genuine intimacy feels harder to find than ever.
I think that's what makes Please such a powerful and resonant novel. It doesn't offer easy answers or neat resolutions.
No.
It leaves us wrestling with these complex questions about identity, connection, and the search for meaning in a world that often feels chaotic and meaningless.
So after this deep dive into Please, what's the one thing you want listeners to take away from this book?
Well, Please is a book that will stay with you,
Yeah.
make you think, and possibly even make you squirm a little.
Right?
It's a reminder that the search for meaning can be messy and sometimes even lead us to dark places.
Yeah.
But even in the midst of that darkness, there's a glimmer of hope. A reminder that the human capacity for connection, however flawed, is what makes life worth living.
It's a book that challenges us to confront our own vulnerabilities, our own desires, and our own struggles to connect with others in a world that often feels designed to keep us apart.
Yeah,
It's not always a comfortable journey, but it's a necessary one.
it is.
So if you're looking for a book that will stay with you long after you finish the last page, a book that will make you question everything you thought you knew about yourself and the world around you, then Please is a journey worth taking.
It is.
And who knows, maybe along the way you'll find a little bit of yourself reflected in those dark, unsettling pages.